Pregnant and hurt, she hid in a garage. Discover who this amazing mechanic truly was. Sarah slipped into the dusty familiarity of her father's garage, the stale air heavy with memories she'd almost forgotten. The sounds of the town seemed miles away, muffled whispers unable to infiltrate this sanctuary of rusting metal and oil. At 22, she was pregnant, not just a word, but a suffocating reality that twisted her gut and clouded her mind. The weight of judgment felt like a leaden anchor, dragging her deeper into despair. She inhaled sharply, the acrid scent of motor oil stirring long-buried emotions. Would anyone understand? As she peered around the cluttered shop, half-heartedly ignoring the ache in her heart, a figure caught her eye. In the far corner, Jake worked methodically on an engine, grease smudging his cheek. She felt an odd pull toward him, though he looked like he belonged to a world far removed from her own broken life. What did she know about mechanics? About real dreams? He noticed her and paused, eyes dark with something empathy or curiosity. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice rough yet inviting. Each syllable felt like a lifeline as a wave of uncertainty washed over Sarah. She hesitated, the thoughts swirling in her mind. Was it wrong to seek solace in him, a man who didn't know her pain? Fear settled like a cold fog, intensifying her internal struggle. I need to get away," she finally admitted, hardly recognizing her own voice. The first moral dilemma crept in, a persistent echo in her heart. Should she stay and learn? To surrender to the shame of judgment? Or flee back home, where the poisonous familiarity of her past lingered? Panic tightened in her throat. She could almost hear her ex-boyfriend's sneering words, twisting her stomach as if they were current reality, reminding her of the toxicity she had barely escaped. Yet, with each turn of the wrench and rhythmic hum of engines, she found herself enveloped by an odd sense of belonging. Jake was gruff but gentle, he understood struggle without needing to probe. They exchanged stories while working, their laughter ricocheting around the garage. But occasional shadows crept in, haunting moments when her mind wandered back to what had once been. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but just as she felt the threads of resolve weaving together, Jake brought up racing, a reminder of dreams unfulfilled. The wrench paused in her hand, the emotional weight palpable. How ironic, the man before her, a mechanic wrestling with regrets, while she battled her own impending motherhood. The mirage of strength flickered like a faulty bulb as she recalled the bitterness of betrayal. Her ex suddenly intruded on what floated in the air like a cloudy shadow, engine noises replaced by an inner turmoil louder than any revving motor. A confrontation loomed, a head-on collision of her old life meeting this fragile new one. Her pulse raced at the thought, every muscle taut like a tightly wound spring. And just when she thought she could brace for the chaos, she stumbled across an old letter from her father hidden in the garage's depths, filled with secrets that could shatter her already fractured hopes. The world around her blurred as she grappled with this new twist. Was she destined to repeat the same wounds? As dusk painted the sky with shades of uncertainty, Sarah stood frozen at the threshold, fearful of stepping forward into the unknown. The garage felt smaller, the weight of the past heavier. And just then, the familiar roar of an engine outside sliced through the silence. Darkness settling, anticipation buzzing like electric tension. Could this moment change everything? Her heart thrummed as the door swung open, a collision of past and future moments away from unfolding. The moment the garage door creaked open, Sarah felt the air shift, charged with uncertainty. A figure emerged, illuminated in the dim light, a tall man, silhouetted against the fading sunset, its warm hues clashing with the cool shadows of the garage. She recognized him instantly. It was Mark, her ex-boyfriend, the very embodiment of her past that she had tried so desperately to leave behind. Her heart raced, not just from the sudden shock, but from a deeper dread. Mark's presence threatened to drag her back into a world of hurt, one where she had felt inadequate and lost. Every doubt she thought she had shelved now clawed back through the seams of her resolve. The mechanical clatter of wrenches faded, replaced by the deafening incantations of fear and anger. Why was he here? The question flashed in her mind, urgent like a warning light on a dashboard. Mark scanned the garage, his gaze landing on her like a weight. "Sarah," he began, the inflection in his voice almost soothing but tinged with possessiveness she remembered too well. "I thought I might find you here." "Why?" She shot back, defiance flaring within her. She stepped away from the comforting shadows of the garage, ready to confront him, every muscle coiling tightly. "What do you think?" "I wanted to see how you're doing." His expression was impossible to read, a mix of concern and something darker. Had he come to gloat? To invoke old wounds? She grounded herself, determined not to allow his words to penetrate her fragile new foundation. "I'm doing better without you," she replied, testing her voice for strength. Each word faltered yet emerged with a conviction she hadn't expected to summon. Growling he never truly had faith in her dreams was becoming easier, but she understood it meant she needed to face it all now. "Really? It's been weeks, and you just disappear." A hint of anger breached his stoic mask. "You could be called." "No, I couldn't. Not when your calls would drown out the last shred of who I am." I was suffocating. The statement rang true, reverberating against the uneasy silence. Jake, the mechanic who had become a refuge, watched from a distance, sensing the tension but respecting her need to confront her past head-on. "Is that what you told yourself while you fled? You can't run forever, Sarah." His attempt at manipulation hung heavily in the air, forcing her to question her own choices. In that moment, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Was she truly better off? What if she couldn't escape the cycle of disappointment and resentment? But the picture of her future, a little life nestled within her, pushed back hard against skepticism. She would not let it wither before it had a chance to bloom. "Running? It's called breaking free," she countered, grounding her voice within the strength that she had been building in the garage. "I'm finding out who I really am without you." Mark stepped forward, shadows shifting on his keen features. "And what if you find out you're nothing without me?" His words tried to ensnare her, but she had a growing clarity that held the power to sever the sneers of his doubts. "I might just find I'm everything without you," she declared, a newfound fire igniting within her. Jake didn't move closer, but Sarah caught a glimpse of his silent support, a reminder that there were still people in her corner. She could see a shape shifting in her fear, compelling her to step toward the possibility of her potential. As Mark's presence invaded her sanctuary, a new question surfaced: would she dare to face her fears and embrace the unknown future, even if it meant leaving behind the remnants of her old self? The garage door loomed open, a passageway to a life she had yet to unravel. The notion sent invigorating chills down her spine. What new journey awaited her if she leaped into the dark unknown? The click of the garage door echoed like a challenge, pushing her to decide between the weight of familiarity and the exhilarating offer of possibility. With renewed resolve, she turned to face Mark, prepared to sever any ties that threatened to hold her back. Now was the moment to draw the line between past and future. The time had come to face not only him, but herself. Would she seize it? The tension hung in the air thick and palpable as Sarah stood before Mark, heart racing with each accusation he leveled. The garage, once her sanctuary, now felt like a theater giant where all her past insecurities played out before her. Each brush with his gaze threatened to uncover the layers she'd so carefully wrapped around herself. "I refuse to be your puppet any longer, Mark," she asserted, her voice slicing through the silence like a sharpened tool. The confident edge that colored her words surprised even her. Where had it come from? Was her newfound strength truly bound to this moment, or had it been quietly simmering beneath the surface all along? Mark's posture shifted slightly, his expression transforming from smugness to a facade of concern. "This isn't healthy, you know," he implored, as if caring for her like an old lover must. You need to confront these things together. Together. The word itself infuriated her. She thought of the countless times they had tackled challenges, only for him to undermine her resolve while she wrestled with self-doubt. You think you know what's healthy for me? She shot back, recalling the emotional labyrinth he had trapped her in, a chaos of accusations and buried dreams. What about everything you didn't support while pretending to love me? The flicker of surprise in his eyes reflected the inherent disconnect between perception and reality. Personal sacrifices made for his sake had silenced years of her ambition. The rising tide of anger swelled within. Each pulse was a reminder that if she was to have any chance at reclaiming her identity, it meant standing firm in her truth. I'm not looking for validation anymore, Mark, Sarah continued, fueled by her adaptation to newfound clarity. I have a life to build, and it doesn't include you dragging me down. He stepped towards her, aura pushing against her like a dense fog seeking to wrap around her resolve. You're just shutting the door on everything you know, he countered, a hint of desperation creeping in. You'll end up regretting this. For a moment, her insecurities flickered, echoing his words in a nagging thrum. Doubt preyed on her. But the image of her future fought back fiercely, a more defined purpose, a sense of belonging within herself, untainted by someone else's whims. I regret staying too long in a relationship based on fear rather than love. And choosing myself is the bravest act I can commit to, she replied, heart thrumming with certainty. In that moment, Jake, who had been an unwavering silent witness, stepped forward. His voice cracked the bubble Mark tried to cast around her. It's her journey, Mark. Not yours to dictate. She's discovering who she is, and it's compelling to watch. Mark recoiled as if slapped, the web of manipulation loosening, though still desperate to ensnare. You'll see, he said, his voice strained with the threat of vulnerability, you'll realize that you can't thrive alone. The air changed again, the atmosphere around them shifting, echoing the duality of fear and empowerment. Sarah could feel concrete change, a chapter of her story being rewritten in real time. With every heartbeat, she chiseled away the sentiments of betrayal, reclaiming what was hers. It's not about being alone, Mark, she said slowly, firmly. It's about discovering my own strength. That's a far better company than anything you could offer. I am ready to navigate the unknown. As the words left her, triumph surged through her veins. She felt the walls around her self-worth beginning to cement into a strong foundation, but then, like an unexpected crack in a newly poured sidewalk, a troubling thought intruded. Was she truly ready for the leap into independence? Just standing tall felt like a mere facade, the future loomed uncertain, with both promise and fear intertwining. Would she be able to hold on to the identity she was carving out, or would she slip back into those shadows? She pondered, her heart heavy yet alive with potential. The realization that past choices shaped her but did not define her sent a thrill through her, igniting a fresh resolve. Each passing moment solidified the impending decision of moving forward into the unknown. How would she navigate this journey without the comforting but stifling presence of Mark? With every ounce of her being, she willed herself not to look back. Whatever awaited was shrouded in ambiguity, but the spark of possibility burning within her now ignited an undeniable yearning. Across the garage, Mark watched, an inscrutable expression playing across his features. He had come seeking to reclaim a piece of her past, but in this encounter, she had unearthed pieces of herself she didn't know existed. What would she uncover next on this path of self-discovery? With the tension of the confrontation still buzzing in the air, Sarah took a step back, needing to put distance between herself and Mark. The garage, brimming with dusty tools and forgotten projects, suddenly felt like an arena where she was no longer just defending herself but actively carving a pathway into an unwritten future. Her fingers grazed the workbench, lingering on the rough surface where so many moments of clarity had come to life during late nights spent fixing cars, lost in the rhythm of turning wrenches and unleashing her creativity. Those moments had always brought clarity, yet how often had she succumbed to the fog of doubt that Mark loved to propagate. "Jake," she called, breaking the quiet that settled after Mark's parting jab. "Can we take a drive? I need to clear my head." Jake nodded, his expression compassionate yet resolute. Let us get out of here. They climbed into her battered old truck, and as Sarah's fingers wrapped around the steering wheel, she felt an emerging sense of autonomy. She was not only driving away from Mark but also steering herself toward a new chapter. With every mile, the weight of the emotional exchange began to lift, revealing a sense of freedom she hadn't known she was missing. Where are we heading? Jake asked, his voice steady, grounding her amidst swirling uncertainty. Anywhere that's not here, she said simply, though the underlying truth was more profound. She was heading toward self-discovery. She appreciated Jake's support, but she didn't want to lean too heavily on him. The realization that she needed to learn to navigate her life independently settled in her mind. The road stretched out before them, flanked by trees that swayed under the afternoon sun. She kept her eyes on the horizon while the thoughts swirled within. What did it mean to build a life without the confines of her past? The visions of her dreams began to crystallize, one by one. She wanted to run her own auto repair shop, a place not just for fixing cars, but a sanctuary for others like her who needed to feel seen and empowered. Have you always wanted to work with cars? Jake asked, breaking her reverie. She chuckled lightly, the sound brightening the heaviness that had previously weighed on her spirit. Honestly, I didn't even consider it until a few years ago. In high school, I thought I'd go into design or art. After that, I felt so lost. It was only by touching the metal, learning the mechanics, that I found this spark. Jake nodded, his gaze on the road ahead. You're good at it, Sarah. You have a gift. His words pierced through her. Gifts were not easily abandoned, nor were they a burden, they were the essence of her being. She felt the stirrings of ambition rise again, pushing back against her old insecurities. Somewhere between rebuilding engines and rebuilding herself, there lay an undeniable symbiosis. Both processes required patience, skill, and an unwavering commitment to see the work through. Do you think I could really do it? She contemplated aloud, her voice softer now. Of course, he replied firmly. You're stronger than you know. But it won't be easy. You'll have to confront past fears every step of the way. She nodded, internalizing the challenge. The life she wanted could not be handed to her, it had to be forged from the ashes of her previous self, the one that had dimmed under the weight of Mark's influence. Suddenly, a realization struck her. What if I started small? Maybe I could fix cars out of my garage and see how it goes. Jake grinned, his enthusiasm infectious. That's a brilliant idea. Start with what you know, then build from there. It won't happen overnight, but you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish. Taking a deep breath, she felt empowered. Yet, bubbling anxiety lingered at the edge of her excitement. Would she be able to sustain this momentum? Could she fend off the shadows of doubt that had crept in so effortlessly before? The unknown was daunting, filled with risks, but also ripe with opportunity. As they drove, contentment began to wash over her. She crossed the threshold not only of the garage but into the awakening of her truest self. What stood ahead was a chance to reclaim her narrative and redefine her purpose. But lingering questions echoed in her mind. Would she be able to confront the ghosts of her past while simultaneously building the future she envisioned? Sarah, Jake broke the silence, shifting his gaze toward her. Do you think you'll run into Mark again? The question hung heavy like an unspent residue of tension, jolting her from her thoughts. She had severed ties but hadn't acknowledged the potential for future encounters. The ramifications of her decisions were just beginning to unfold, and she needed to prepare for what lay ahead. I guess it's time to find out, she said with a newfound resolution that surprised even her. I'm ready to face whatever comes my way. As the wind swept through the open windows, she could almost sense the promise of adventure calling her. How would she navigate the ripples of her bold choices in a world filled with past shadows still loitering on the edges of her landscape? With the sun dipping low in the sky, casting long shadows over the road, Sarah felt an unmistakable blend of excitement and trepidation surge within her. It was more than just the thrill of a new venture, it represented a unique opportunity to redefine her existence on her own terms. She and Jake shared a comfortable silence, yet an undercurrent of urgency coursed through her veins, a signal that she needed to move quickly before doubt seeped back in. "Once we get back," she said, breaking the silence, "I want to set up my workspace. It's time to get serious about this." The words tasted bittersweet as they left her lips, echoing her determination, but also highlighting the risks of initiating a journey that could swallow her whole. "Great! How do you want to start?" Jake's enthusiasm encouraged her, a fresh gust that fueled her resolve. "I'll need some shelves, a good workbench, and tools. I can't believe I haven't thought of that yet. I've been using half-broken ones." A wave of clarity washed over her as the practical side of her mind kicked in, pushing her initial fears aside. "Let's make a list tonight. I can help you pick them up tomorrow," Jake offered, his tone insistent but light. This synergy felt invigorating. For the first time, Sarah was ready to invite collaboration without feeling dependent, but her thoughts soon spun back to Mark. The more she tried to dismiss him as an obstacle, the more present he became in her mind. What would she say if they crossed paths again? Would he still try to trigger that doubt she had clung to for too long? The whispers of insecurity flared up, threatening to drown out her ambition. "Are you okay?" Jake's voice pulled her from the spiral of her thoughts. "You've gone quiet again." She met his gaze, a genuine concern reflected back at her. "Yeah, just trying to shake off some old fears. It's hard to break free from what used to hold me down." Jake nodded, his expression softening. "Remember, you've already made progress. It's okay to have those moments, but don't let them take the wheel." His words resonated within her, reminiscent of driving skills that required not only a focus on the road ahead but also an awareness of what lurked behind. Each danger she had encountered in the past was a lesson, and it was time to utilize that knowledge effectively. Sarah tightened her grip on the steering wheel, feeling the surge of confidence growing stronger. As they turned onto the street leading to her house, the familiarity of her surroundings transformed into something more significant, transforming from limitations into potential. Later that evening, seated at her kitchen table with a notepad, Sarah began to list every tool she thought she would need, from wrenches to jacks. Each item felt like a stepping stone, a way to build the life she desired from the scattering of doubts and failures. The act of writing brought a sense of control, something she had craved during her turbulent relationship with Mark, yet, the question still loomed over her. What would it take to actually confront him if the moment arose? She was aware that avoiding confrontation would only grant Mark power through fear. To build her future, she needed to face the shadows that haunted her. As she jotted down ideas, each scribble punctuated with new excitement, a flicker of fear danced along her spine. What if she stumbled? What if her past mistakes echoed too loudly for her to silence? But she squashed the thoughts as they emerged. Self-imposed limits were challenges she was prepared to dismantle. "I'll work through it," she whispered into the quiet of her kitchen, the echoes of her former self receding. This moment wasn't about the destination, it was about equipping herself for the journey ahead. Her mind switched between the practical tasks ahead and the looming specter of Mark. The chaos of her determination bubbled just beneath the surface. She was tired of bending to the weight of anyone else's expectations. With her heart pounding alongside her growing aspirations, Sarah made a pact with herself: whatever awaited her in her garage or in meeting Mark again, she would confront it head-on. And just as she felt coherence forming in her resolve, a message popped up on her phone, startling her. It was from Mark. "Can we talk?" Her breath hitched in her throat. Would she allow this encounter to derail her newfound path, or could it be the moment of truth she had been waiting for? The possibilities swirled in a storm of uncertainty, reminding her of the delicate balance she was forging. How will she respond to this message, and will it steer her toward the future she is fighting to build, or back to the shadows she thought she left behind? Sarah's heart raced as she continued to stare at the message on her phone. The simple text from Mark buzzed insistently in her mind, creating a tumultuous swirl of emotions. Part of her wanted to ignore it to let the past remain buried. But another part, one that grew with each second of contemplation, urged her to address it. How had she let herself get to this point, teetering on the edge of a decision while still feeling tethered to Mark's influence? This wasn't just a conversation. It was a crossroads, calling her to confront a person she used to be, someone who allowed fear to shape her choices. She set her phone down and focused on the kitchen table, now scattered with her notepad, pens, and sketches of workspace layout ideas. It had become a sanctuary for her ambitions, a collection point for her dreams. She took a deep breath, letting the familiar scent of coffee linger as she arose. The line between her new self and the remnants of her past wavered. She needed clarity. Grabbing a fresh sheet of paper, Sarah wrote down what Mark represented in her life. The ink scratched across the page as if each letter was an unlatched door she was about to swing open. Fear. Dependency. Doubt. She paused, the trembling in her hand echoing the emotional weight she had carried for so long. Next to those words, she drew a line and began to elucidate what she wanted instead: freedom. Confidence. Determination. Suddenly, it became clear. Mark's message wasn't just a throwback to old wounds but an opportunity to assert her growth. Would confronting him mean reliving those memories, or could it mean finally severing the strings that had held her captive? She felt a spark of determination ignite within her, a realization that she was not that girl anymore. Returning to her phone, she typed a response, the clacking of keys sounding like a heartbeat in the still of the evening. "I'm not sure what we need to talk about, but if you feel it's important, we can meet." As she hit send, a wave of vulnerability washed over her, combined with a surge of empowerment. She wasn't reaching out because she needed closure, she was opening a door from a place of strength and self-assurance. The release felt liberating. With that off her mind for the moment, Sarah turned her gaze back to the workspace plans. Her dreams of building a life that thrived on her own terms came rushing back, accompanied by visions of tools, progress, and a sense of achievement she had seldom allowed herself to envision before. Over the next few days, she and Jake worked tirelessly to transform her garage. Walls were painted, shelves assembled, and workbenches installed. Each project deepened her resolve, yet the impending meeting with Mark loomed overhead like an uninvited cloud, constantly threatening rain on her parade point. One evening, after an especially exhausting day, she sat on her newly crafted workbench, staring at the tools laid out before her. Each piece gleamed with possibility, much like her future felt now. The path forward wasn't just about creating objects but crafting an identity she could be proud of. Just then, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification announcing the time and place Mark suggested for their meeting. Anxiety tinged her excitement. What if he tried to pull her back into his orbit? What if he didn't recognize the woman she had fought so hard to become? Sarah felt caught between exhilaration and dread, her mind racing with possible outcomes. She wasn't prepared to go back to a place of uncertainty, to fold like a house of cards under pressure. But as she picked up a wrench and let it slide through her fingers, she found strength in the weight of it, a reminder that she was more equipped than ever for any challenge that lay ahead. With the decision made to confront her past, she felt a renewed sense of purpose flow through her. The meeting with Mark wasn't just about him, it was an essential step in crystallizing her new independence. As she turned off the lights in her garage, the shadows danced and blended into the promise of the unknown, her heartbeat echoing through the darkness. Maybe this confrontation could be the concluding act of her past and the triumphant overture for a future she had always yearned for. With her mind set on the meeting, Sarah closed her eyes, imagining how she'd stand her ground, and breathe life into her new reality. The moment was steadily approaching when she would put everything to the test, but she still felt the weight of her decision, and as she opened her eyes, another message startled her. This time, it was from Jake. "You ready for tomorrow?" Tomorrow loomed large. Would she be more than ready, or would the past catch up to her in unexpected ways? As the dawn broke the next morning, the golden light poured into the garage, illuminating the space Sarah had poured her soul into over the last few days. The smells of paint and wood still lingered in the air, a testament to the effort she had invested in transforming this space into one that represented her aspirations. Today held a new significance, a point where she could stand firm in her new identity. She glanced around the garage, taking in each carefully placed tool and each polished surface, an intimate showcase of her growth and determination. Yet, a suffocating anxiety gripped her as she thought about her impending meeting with Mark. The emotional currents were strong, but deep within her, an ember of determination flickered, refusing to be extinguished. She would not allow the shadows of her past to overtake the brightness she was cultivating. Jake arrived early, his energetic presence a grounding force. "What has got you looking so serious today?" he asked, catching her off guard as he lifted a heavy toolbox into place. "Just thinking about today," she admitted, fidgeting with a wrench. "You going to face him, or what?" Jake's tone was casual, but there was an underlying seriousness that resonated with her. With a sigh, Sarah put the wrench down, crossing her arms defensively. "I have to, right? It's time to clear the air. But I'm scared." "Scared of what he might say? Or scared of who you really are now?" Jake leaned against the workbench, his bright eyes focused on her, compelling her to confront her inner turmoil. Sarah took a deep breath, the conversation stirring something within her. "I think it's both. I've spent so long reconstructing my life, and facing him means risking all that. Or it could reinforce everything you've built. Remember, you're the one in control now," he said, the weight of his words sinking in. They had worked in unison, transforming not just a physical space but her mental landscape. With each passing minute, the clock ticked closer to her meeting with Mark. Gathering her thoughts, she decided to craft a list of things she needed to communicate. Clarifying her boundaries felt vital, not just to convey her decision clearly to Mark, but to solidify her own understanding of where she stood. As she jotted down words like "not a victim" and "independent," she had a sudden revelation. She was no longer the woman defined by her past. Mark's presence in her life had been a lesson, not a shackle. She wasn't here to appease his memories of her, but to assert her right to move forward on her own terms. The thoughts coursing through her struck a chord. The balance was shifting. She was not just confronting Mark, she was living out her commitment to herself, a defiant act of self-love. In that clarity, the anxiety began to morph into excitement, a sense of invigoration to prove her own strength. "I can do this," she whispered under her breath. When the moment finally arrived, she stood outside the cafe where they agreed to meet, the familiar sense of dread looming, yet also tinged with empowerment. The door felt heavy as she pushed it open, the barista's chatter receding into the background. It was just her and the reality looming ahead. Mark sat at a table, his posture a mixture of uncertainty and expectancy. Her heart quickened. This was it. She squared her shoulders, inhaling deeply for a steadying breath. She was here, ready to engage, ready to confront, ready to redefine her past without being defined by it. "Sarah," he began, looking up, and for a moment, she hesitated. Doubts flickered through her mind like uninvited guests at a party, but she simply focused on the list she had prepared. "Mark, I need to say some things," she said firmly, the words now flowing, each one shedding another layer of the doubts she'd carried for far too long. The tension hung in the air, thick and palpable, but Sarah realized it was not the fear of what Mark would say that drove her heart to race. It was the knowledge that today was not about him, but about her unwavering journey towards self-empowerment. As she spoke, he absorbed her words, the shift in dynamics undeniable. Yet, out of nowhere, Mark's expression shifted, and a new emotion flickered across his face, a challenge that would test everything Sarah had just started to reclaim. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked, an edge of desperation in his voice that hinted at unresolved threads between them. In that instant, Sarah sensed that while she had come to confront her past, she was faced with the daunting prospect of solidifying her truth, perhaps against his will. The moment could shift the course of both their lives, but a tiny part of her couldn't shake off the swirling uncertainty. What if this meeting led to repercussions she couldn't foresee? The question hung heavy as she prepared to answer, adventures of self-discovery and implications of the future battling within her, an intense choice awaiting resolution. Would she stand tall, enlightened, or would she falter under pressure's weight? The air felt electric, charged with anticipation and unspoken words. Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears as she faced Mark, feeling as though the entire cafe was watching, waiting for her to crack or to soar. This was not merely a conversation, it was a reckoning, a fierce confrontation with her past that now spilled into the present. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Mark's question echoed in her mind. It lingered like a spectre, casting shadows on the bright new world she had begun to carve out for herself. For a moment, she considered retreating, the comfort of the familiar past beckoning her to hide. But she had come too far. She had invested too much time in building her life anew, and retreat was no longer an option. "I need to," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt inside. Each word formed a shield against the uncertainties clawing at her confidence. Mark shifted in his seat, the unease in his eyes clashing with her newfound determination. "I just thought we could talk things through," he offered tentatively, a hint of vulnerability in his tone. "It's time to throw out what doesn't serve me anymore," Sarah declared, grounding her voice in the steely resolve she had cultivated in the garage. Her awakening went beyond the renovation of the physical space around her, it extended into the very core of her identity. She was rebuilding herself, layer by layer, and those layers were not up for negotiation. As she continued, her heart raced, pushing her words with urgency. "I'm not the person you think I am, Mark. That's not me anymore. I'm independent now, determined to reclaim my life without the past holding me hostage." Each sentence felt like a strike, a blow against the remnants of a life once dictated by someone else's narrative. She felt the strength in her convictions grow with each utterance, and as the words flowed, she discovered deeper facets of herself she hadn't fully embraced: courage, assertiveness, conviction. Mark's face hardened, the dissonance between his expectations and the reality she presented becoming evident. "You think you can just turn your back on everything we had? On me?" A revelation sparked in Sarah's mind like a sudden flash of light in a darkened room. This wasn't just about confronting Mark, it was about confronting the fear of losing what she had built. It was about standing tall in her newfound identity and the respect she owed herself. "Everything we had was rooted in control, Mark," she replied, voice unwavering. "But I've reclaimed my narrative, and I won't let memories pressure me into feeling guilty for moving forward." The intensity of the exchange ignited something within her. In that moment, she realized how pivotal this conversation was for her growth, not only in affirming what she wanted but in learning to validate her experiences without allowing them to burden her. The courage she was discovering was transformative, forging a new version of herself that was resilient and tenacious. Mark's expression softened for a fleeting moment, showcasing a flicker of understanding, but it was quickly masked by a defensive posture. "You're throwing away everything we shared. What's left if you just walk away now?" The challenge in his voice made her pause, reflecting an internal struggle. Was it a betrayal to forge ahead? Or was it a necessary step for her growth? "Maybe it's time you recognize that memories don't define our future," Sarah said, a new layer of conviction empowering her stance. Each word felt like a hammer shaping the metal of her resolve. She wouldn't allow him to dictate the terms of her closure. The fear of loss had kept her shackled, but she knew what she wanted and would fight to keep it alive. The audacity of claiming her own future wasn't just liberating, it was exhilarating. The air thickened with unresolved tension, and Mark sat rigid, his eyes flickering with something she didn't want to decipher. "But what if you're making a mistake?" Sarah felt the weight of the question hang in the air, a potent reminder of how deeply interconnected love and uncertainty could be. Yet, the flicker of doubt within her faded as determination enveloped her. "What's left to lose if I don't try?" His silence spoke volumes, but in listening, Sarah realized that the true confrontation lay not in her exchange with Mark but in her decision to walk through that metaphorical door she had built for herself. As she prepared to move forward, each breath rekindled her confidence. This point of confrontation did not mark an end but a beginning, the door to a future she could actively shape on her own terms. Yet, as the conversation reached a crescendo of emotion, she felt an unforeseen wave of trepidation wash over her. She had opened the floodgates of her truth, but would she have the strength to handle the surge of ramifications awaiting her? The simmering uncertainty filled the room with a palpable tension. The road ahead stretched out, filled with both possibilities and potential pitfalls. In that charged silence, she was left with one piercing question: was she ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant leaving pieces of her past behind? The silence felt heavier than before, pressing in on Sarah like a weight she had been struggling to lift, yet now found herself on the cusp of releasing. Outside the cafe, the sun began to dip low in the sky, casting long shadows, echoing the complexity of her emotions. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment, knowing she had opened a door, one that could unravel everything or redefine her entirely. Mark's eyes searched hers, uncovering flickers of disbelief and something akin to fear. The reality of their exchange hung in the air, tugging at old memories and unresolved expressions of love. Each inhale brought with it a reminder of what she was up against: her past, his expectations, and the version of herself she was still learning to embody. "What do you want, Sarah? Is it really to cut ties?" His voice was softer now, almost pleading. "We had something real." But the word real reverberated in her mind, its meaning distorted by the years dominated by control and silence. She had dissected what their relationship meant, not just to him, but to her. Was it a cherished memory, or a collection of well-executed illusions? "I want to learn who I can be without us," she stated, present and unwavering. There was a sharp crackle of realization sparking alive as she spoke, revealing not only a burgeoning emotional clarity but also an unanticipated urge to break free from the chains of expected devotion. She had spent too long trying to fit herself into someone else's narrative, and now it was time to rewrite her own story. As she gazed at Mark, she recognized the partnership they once had, but discerned it was a partnership born from convenience rather than connection, a shadow of real intimacy. It felt heavy, but also liberating to understand. "I don't want your dreams anymore. I want to build my own." She watched as the impact of her words landed on him, his shoulders stiffening and his jaw tightening in response. In that moment, she felt the fog of his presence recede slightly, and a spark of exhilaration ignited within her. She didn't just want to escape, she wanted to evolve, but even as empowerment coursed through her veins, doubts lingered. A lingering question she had yet to confront crashed over her like a wave. Could she withstand loss? Not just the loss of Mark but of the entire identity she had wrapped around their bond. "What if you fail?" he challenged, his voice edged with anxiety, desperate for any foothold in their conversation. "Failure is part of the growth I'm searching for. I won't let the fear of it hold me back any longer," she asserted with fierce resolution. Each statement became an anchor, rooting her more firmly in her truth. She had built the groundwork, now it was time to lay the bricks of her future. The warmth of newfound self-acceptance glowed within her, yet it was accompanied by a nagging pain that reminded her of everything left untested. Her work in the garage had opened a world of creativity, a sanctuary where she discovered her talents in mechanics and design. But she had yet to step into the world with those skills genuinely entwined with purpose. "Have you thought about what you're doing with all your time? Your life?" he pushed, visibly distressed. The concern became an invisible barrier between them. "I'm not afraid to figure it out," she replied, each word steeped in determination as she searched her mind for the contours of her aspirations. The vision of a career, a purpose rooted in craftsmanship, began to materialize. She wanted to blend art with mechanics, creating beauty from practicality, yet, even with this clarity, the shadows of doubt remained. Could she truly forge a new path in a field dominated by expectations and norms? Would folks trade their reluctance to accept her? "Sarah, no," she interrupted firmly. "This is my choice, and I will choose for myself." The energies shifted, the air ignited between them, and she felt her heart pulse with a recklessness that had been dormant for too long. With each heartbeat, she was standing not just in a cafe but on the threshold of possibilities. Each decision she made from this moment forward could carve a new path, one that felt undeniably hers. As Sarah stood to leave, a realization dawned on her, a compelling idea that sent a rush through her veins. The future lay not just in the actions she took, but in the voices she'd collect along the way. Deep inside, a plan began to form, one that involved seeking out those who admired her work, looking for mentorships in workshops that celebrated design. She hesitated at the door. Mark would always hold a part of her story, but she needed to focus on the chapters yet unwritten. Would she have the courage to face the industry's barriers ahead? Could she shift from fear and doubt to genuine ambition? As she paused for a moment to collect herself before stepping out, her heart thrummed with the possibility that awaited just beyond the door. What awaited her there? Only time would tell, but with the weight of uncertainty behind her, she was ready to embrace whatever came next. With resolve firming inside her, she crossed the threshold and took her first step forward. Standing at the precipice of her new life, Sarah clutched the steering wheel of her truck, heart racing with a symphony of uncertainties and possibilities. The encounter with Mark gnawed at her, yet as she pulled into the familiar driveway of her transformed garage, she felt each rev of the engine propel her toward the future she had begun to carve. This was no longer just a workshop filled with tools. This was a sanctuary of dreams, a reflection of the woman she was determined to become. She stepped out of the vehicle, grounding herself in the moment. The scent of the freshly painted walls mingled with the lingering aroma of motor oil, each inhalation a reminder of her journey, a path steeped in courage and unwavering resolve. Just last week, she had stood toe-to-toe with her past, daring to articulate her truth to Mark and discovering a reservoir of strength she never knew existed. Now, she was ready to apply that courage toward building the life she envisioned. Jake was already there, arms laden with the last few tools they needed to finalize her workspace. His enthusiasm radiated, fueling her excitement. "You ready to unveil the space?" he asked, a grin stretching across his face. "More than ready," Sarah replied, her voice steady and full of conviction. They stepped inside the garage, the sunlight streaming through the windows illuminating the hard work they'd put into transforming the space. It was no longer an escape, it was a launch pad. With every tool set in place, Sarah felt a sense of ownership over her aspirations. The paths that had once tangled with self-doubt now crystallized into a clear vision, an auto repair business that would empower others, just as she had begun to empower herself. "This garage is going to be my first shop," she said, excitement bubbling over. Jake nodded appreciatively. "You know, people don't just need cars fixed. They need encouragement to chase their own dreams, too. You're going to inspire a lot of folks." Her heart swelled. This was the support she had sought all along, yet had so often confused with dependency. "I never thought I could do this, but now I can see it," she said, voice filled with sincerity. "It's not just about fixing engines, it's about mending spirits." As they set up a makeshift workbench and arranged the tools, Sarah's imagination soared. She envisioned workshops for women, teaching them the ins and outs of automotive repair, how to find strength in and out of the garage. The thought ignited a burgeoning sense of purpose. Meanwhile, her mind flickered back to Mark. The confrontation had freed her. Each word spoken that day had purged lingering feelings of inadequacy. She felt proud, not only for asserting her independence but for embracing her identity as someone capable of crafting not just machines, but futures. Before long, they had completed the task, and Sarah stood back to admire their work, a personalized sanctuary now buzzing with potential. "I can't believe what we've achieved," she said, surveying the organized chaos around her. "This is my space now." "Exactly," Jake affirmed. "This is yours, and nobody can take that away from you." With confidence rising within her, Sarah decided to throw open the doors and welcome the world in literally and metaphorically. "Let us host an open house," she suggested, heart pounding with both excitement and trepidation. "Invite the neighborhood. Show them what I can do." Jake grinned wide. "Absolutely. You'll not only showcase your skills but your story, people will connect with that." The thought solidified. Sarah wanted her journey to resonate beyond her garage, to become a beacon for others navigating the selfish storms of life. She gathered her phone and began planning the event, drafting an invitation that welcomed neighbors to witness her transformation. As dusk settled in, illuminating the garage's interior with a warm, golden glow, Sarah felt a profound sense of achievement. This was no longer just about overcoming her past, it was about cultivating a future that honored her full range of experiences. In the days leading up to the open house, Sarah balanced her preparations with self-reflection, realizing how far she had come. Freshly painted walls symbolized her rebuilt identity, while each tool represented not just her skills but her narrative, intertwined with empowerment and independence. Finally, the day of the open house arrived, a buzz of nervous energy simulating her heartbeat. Neighbors trickled in, drawn by the sounds of moving machinery and lively discussions. As she greeted each guest, Sarah felt a strength solidifying within her. These were not just people from the neighborhood, they were others just like her, seeking solace and assurance. Later, standing in the center of the gathering, she took a deep breath and addressed the crowd. "I want to thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady. "This garage marks not just a space for fixing cars, but a workshop for hope and empowerment. We all have dreams, and I'm here to tell you that it's never too late to chase them." The applause that followed felt like an embrace, validating everything she fought for. She had put her world in motion, launching into a future shaped by courage, creativity, and the ambition to rise. In that moment, Sarah recognized she had conquered more than just emotional obstacles, she had transformed her very essence into something powerful. With that realization, she felt the fears that once clung to her dissipate like morning mist. With Jake standing beside her, a silent supporter in her journey, she knew this was just the beginning. She had taken a leap not only into entrepreneurship but into the realm of self-actualization. This wasn't merely about motor oil and mechanics, this was destiny calling, and she was finally ready to answer. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Sarah stood with confidence, watching her dreams cascade into reality, firmly believing that the days ahead would be not just lived, but truly celebrated. And for you, dear viewer, take a moment to reflect on your own journey. If you find inspiration in Sarah's story or feel moved to pursue your own ambitions, now is the time to make that commitment. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, your support makes all the difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, show your support now. Don't wait even one more second to share this empowering message.